So it looks like most of the people have kind of filed in. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Just some quick housekeeping things initially. We are recording this webinar and it will be available here in the next few days to about a week or so. And so, keep an eye on your email and it should end up there. I am pleased to share that we have actually shifted tonight. We've changed up the webinar from a presentation to an engaging discussion with two very special guests. We have Tony and Vicky DeNicola. And Vicky DeNicola is the founder and CEO of Pig Brig, and she recently completed her PhD in agri-food and environmental sciences. Joining her is Tony DeNicola, the original developer of the Pig Brig trap system. He holds a doctorate in wildlife ecology from Purdue University and is the founder and currently runs the nonprofit organization White Buffalo. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Aaron Summerall, our Director of Outreach, Education, and Research.
Thank you. Tonight too, as we go through, just like what we do with most all of our other webinars, is if you have any questions throughout the night, put them in the Q&A, and as we go through the Q&A with the discussion tonight, we'll keep an eye on that. Any of the questions that we have that come through at the end of the event that we haven't answered throughout the content discussion, we'll definitely cover those before we finish tonight. So we're gonna make sure we keep this going until you have your questions answered and satisfied. We want to make sure you get your money's worth, is what we're talking about here. So as Tony said tonight, what we're going to do, we're going to discuss a little bit about the Pig Brig and how it all come to be and where it's at now, where it's headed. So we do appreciate, first and foremost, all the customers that are out there that we've got to know a lot of you very, very personally. And what is it, Vicky? 5 years now of trap sales. We're at the 10,000 mark around the world in 36 different markets. So it's been awe-inspiring, to say the least, to see the confidence that people have in the Pig Brig system. And I think that's where we're at tonight, is to kind of unveil a little bit more to you about how it got to where it is. So with that, Tony, can you tell us a little bit about how this actually come to be, I think, in the jungles of Guam?
Good evening, everybody. Hey, Aaron, really great to pair up with the new Pig Brig expert and just do a little backfill for you. And I appreciate Vicky and you and the rest of the team, really driving this concept and product forward, right? I don't have that capacity or skill, and hence why, we were able to turn this into a business venture where most of my efforts revolve around research. So we were doing work in Guam for the military, and we were in the old paradigm, right? You got to take a heavy metal panel, drag it through the jungle, try to set it up, swear at it because it's 90 degrees out and 90% humidity. Pigs are still sneaking underneath it because you're in uneven terrain. Extreme frustration. So we've always drop netted deer, we've drop netted pigs, and we're like, why can't we just hold them with a stupid net, right? And you're thinking, is it going to work? I don't know. So we started using the net in a corral shape, and found it was phenomenal. Because we actually started with a guillotine gate, again, following the old concept of you have to have a gate that's activated, and then follow the same protocols. And when we set it the first night, the pigs didn't even go through the gate; they pushed under the net, and that's when the light bulb went off. We're like, whoa, we've been missing the boat for everyone's been missing the boat for a long time. And so we literally started with rectangular pieces of net tied to trees, just single layer, and just draped the inside of the net towards the center. And it worked great. And so we saw that process, but then you also saw deficiencies. And that's what I hope we talk about tonight, and the challenges we experience going from a very rudimentary concept into something that's repeatable and what I like to call predictable, right? We want predictable outcomes. And that's really what we've designed, for the general public. Typically White Buffalo develops things and then we keep them internal. But we found that this trap was just way, way too neat not to share with people and have them have similar experiences to us.
Interestingly, we thought about releasing it just as open source, or licensing it to someone else to build, but we felt really strongly that it would need support. So folks like Aaron and Tony and Abby, I don't know if anyone's spoken to Abby on the phone, but to answer questions and really make sure that we had built a product that would perform really well for a general consumer or folks that were sort of using it out in the wild. We wanted to make sure we heard from our consumers, customers, and that we had a product that worked. I think we were a little bit nervous in the beginning. Is this really going to be as easy for everyone else to use as it was for us? And really decided to bring it to market purposefully and with care for our customers.
Something too is before Pig Brig, I was with Texas A&M University, and whenever it came to my attention that there was a net out there that was intentionally used to try to catch and hold pigs, the first thing come to my mind is there's no way. I mean, just the skepticism that was around just the net holding a pig. Didn't think it was going to work. So I know whenever I became aware of the Pig Brig, there were a lot of those development hurdles that had already been jumped. So Tony, can you tell us a little bit about some of those hurdles that you tested earlier on that we saw, or you found that some worked, some didn't, and just some of the processes through all that different R&D that went on long before this ever became available to the public?
Yeah, and there was a lot of swearing going on. We had our trials and tribulations. Pigs are smart, right? And you think you've outwitted them, and they do an end run on you. So it was this iterative process of, okay, how do we keep this lightweight, low cost, and as effective as any other trap on the market of catching whole sounders, right? That was the goal. And also, can we use components that are available anywhere, right? The only really specialized part of our trap is the net, right? And I'll go into a little bit on how that design evolved with material selection, dimensions. All that is very instrumental, and everyone just looks like any end product. Oh, geez, that's obvious, right? Until you had to go through step by step and see what was attempted, and what worked and what didn't. So one of the first things that we suffered from was using a pretty heavy rope on the top, right, to create some rigor in the trap. And we were told it's a low stretch rope. Well, it's stretched. So then you have a fixed dimension setup with your posts, and now it doesn't fit anymore, right? So what type of rope do you need? How heavy does it have to be? What do we get for durability and weatherability out of that? So that was a reasonably easy obstacle, but something that was overlooked early on because you hadn't made dozens and dozens of sets to show how that material might behave. Then we were first started with that single layer, and you can catch a ton of pigs with a single layer, simple baseball net. No question. There's people out there doing it right now, I'm sure. But what'll happen is, one, pigs chew through it rapidly. They do have a tendency to find those knotted intersections, focus on those and chew. The one layer, they found that once you doubled that net, that you would have them focus on the one layer, you'd have a separate separation, and they wouldn't seem to figure out how to get to the second layer. Most pigs didn't get to that step. So then how do we slow them down with the first layer? So we started with 2 layers of what we call the base net. And that was good, but not good enough. Then we came up with a knotless version with a different, more abrasive material, abrasive resistant material, and better, but we still had enough complaints and challenges. So now you see our final product with a heavier, more robust bore shield to ensure that we have the absolute minimal chance that you're going to have pigs chew through it. So that was a pretty long process because, again, we're trying to keep the cost down and we're trying to keep the weight down. And so we ultimately said, but we need to meet this threshold of reliability and durability. So now you see, and we've tested a multitude of materials and configurations of nets. We've tried square net versus on the diamond. And we use square so you can consistently keep the dimensions of the net, were netting hung on the diamond. For those that aren't aware, that net's very laterally flexible. So it's hard to keep a predictable shape and form when you're working in a fixed dimensional infrastructure with your T-posts. We originally thought about, hey, we can use probably 6 posts, right? Keep it simple. And we were going to build our own posts. But then we're like, wow, these are expensive. They're heavy, right? So we're like, hey, everyone's got access to T-posts. So let's go with T-posts, but that required us to increase the number of posts for the trap to ensure that we're not going to have failures, right? I'm sure some of you out there have had really big catches, and we've never had a failure with this product. So that was critical to ensure that the trap is robust enough, but we're trying to balance that weight and cost. One of the other things that was an embarrassment for me, because we did take this trap down south, we were testing it in Guam. We took it down to South Carolina, Georgia, and we had some challenges, right? Different environments, different pigs, different partners, and we found that when the pigs hit the net wall aggressively, trying to escape, the bottom of the net would bounce off the ground. And you're like, But then you watch some of the camera videos and you go, oh, shoot, you can actually hit the wall, the net bounces, and you see pigs escape. And we're like, oh, man, just when you thought you had it figured out, right? So we're like, how do we keep this down? So we tried to play with lead rope on the bottom like they use on fishing gear. It doesn't do enough, right? There's a lot of force with a pig hitting the trap. And so we ultimately came up with what we call, and you see as a customer, we call them our internal anchor stakes, right? And those are essential. Without those, the trap will fail to reliably contain pigs. It's that simple. So we tried to figure, okay, what material, how heavy are they? Are they going to be strong enough, to withstand the force of impact? So that was a big adjustment, right? Because I was like, I want this simple, right? Least amount of parts, the most simple concept, as light as possible. But that was, we determined to be a very vital element to ensure this trap was, again, predictably catching and holding pigs. We used early on some mounts on top of the T-post. You want something quick and easy. Clip the net on, hook your cam strap on, off you go. Well, you start looking at welding and fabrication costs, and you're like, wow, the weight of those items and then the cost of those items, we decided, as customers now see, use a very simple muffler clamp that you can get at the parts store if you lose it, and it suffices to accommodate the net and the cam strap adjustment to the pole. So along with that center anchor stake, a lot of people probably look at the net and go, why the heck do these idiots have these black straps? We call them the mid-post cam strap. And that was also part of the net behavior when pigs were hitting it, because it controlled the shock wave and kept it between posts versus allowing that to amplify around the net. So those were an add-on, simple add-on, but another add-on that got us away from the rectangle net hanging on trees. It's like, that was great as a rudimentary concept, but all these other components were also vital. I would say the seam. Some people look at the seam, they go, why the heck do you have a seam in this thing, right? I don't use it. And, a lot of people, if they have smart pigs, may take that net trap, put it in the forest, and put it around trees and cover to really conceal it. And they needed an opening to be able to wrap it around that substrate. And for people that trailer pigs, like folks in Texas, you needed a way to open the net wall to facilitate pig exit into a trailer. So that was another iteration to ensure that all customers, could use this net for a variety of scenarios. I think you all might have some, other remembrances, but I think those were the big ones on how we got to where we are today, to make sure, again, that we have what I would consider a highly professional product, that I would use personally, but I would use nothing less than the version that it is now, to ensure that when I was providing services or trying to solve my own problems, that I'm not having failures because of some oversight or some corner that was cut just to, either to save money and or, avoid trying to, get into the extra add-ons that seem meaningless. But if you trap enough pigs, that's the outcome.
Yeah, that's something too. And I guess in one of those just to kind of add to that, cutting the corners, and just full disclosure, not an intentional corner cut, but I found myself earlier on whenever I first started using the Pig Brig, even whenever I was still at Texas A&M, I forgot those internal anchor stakes in at the house one day, and thought, well, you know what, that might not be that critical. I'll just give it a shot. It's 25 miles one way back to the house. Went in and hung the net, had the pigs ready to go, put the net on the ground, caught pigs. Thought tomorrow morning is going to be great. They were in the trap 10 o'clock that night. Got up the next morning about 5 o'clock, had 4 or 5 pigs in the trap. And going back and looking at the video, like what you were referencing there, without those internal anchor stakes, as those pigs start to thrash that net, it would kick the net up, and pigs on the opposite side had an avenue to get out. And I noticed that it may be more so with the smaller catches than it was so with the larger catches. So I don't know if that's something that you've noticed in testing, as far as again too, the urgency, where it would have been best, my best decision to have gone back, got those anchor stakes and done it the right way. But sometimes experience is learned the hard way, and that seemed to be an experience that I had there, just forgetting those internal anchor stakes, and could still catch the pigs, had a lot of pigs, but seemed to be a 15 catch or something like that. I get there the next morning, got 5 or 6.
Yeah, and that again is, we're trying to prevent other people from having those challenges, right? And that's why the customer support team is vital, and having people that are available to help guide you and explain why certain things are done, why you can and can't do other corner cutting, because this is the risk, right? Because we've seen it. We sent some of our early traps out to professionals throughout the Southeast that trap thousands of pigs a year. We said, hey, go get them. Trap as many as you can. We had many catches, over 60 pigs, and you'd see some deficiencies, right? You see that the seam was not robustly attached enough. No problem. Hey, we need to shift the bore shield up a little bit to ensure that that wall is protected. And so you're back to, geez, I'd really like to have a smaller bore shield, lighter weight, lower cost, but this is the risk. If you do enough trapping, you're eventually going to see some failures. And at this point, all those same participants in those early evaluations all use Pig Brigs, swear by them, and really we're grateful to them for providing all that feedback. And we continue to be grateful, for customer feedback on what they're experiencing and challenges that they've seen, and hopefully we're able to help them out.
You alluded to starting out with 6 T-posts in the earlier versions, and with the testing and so forth and so on. What were the decisions behind settling on the 10 T-post?
So again, that was another iterative process, right? It's like, of course if I can do it with 2 T-posts, great, right? But eventually you get to the other end of the spectrum, I don't need 20 T-posts. So we tried to get to the point where we have the least number, but made sure that we would not have failures with big catches. And again, unless I'm unaware of some of the, if there's 10,000 traps out there, unless I've missed some stories, and I usually get, a kick in the rump when something goes sideways with the trap, I haven't heard of any gross failures, with it. And to your, yeah, beyond the chew outs, that happen on occasion. So it's time tested. And I've gone back to those lighter versions, and you can see the strain. And those of you that have caught a lot of pigs, that's a lot of force in there, a lot of weight in there, right? And so you start pushing your luck and going with fewer posts, you're likely to have an overall mechanical failure because it can't handle a load. People say, how come, some of the videos you don't use 10 trees? And if anyone has ever had an accident hitting a tree, you realize they don't move, right? So we don't need 10 points for connection, we just need to strengthen integrity. So you need to be able to create an adequate polygon, and then the trees serve as that, the strength that you don't need, the ground, the exterior ground anchors and the cam straps, because that tree's not going anywhere. So that's where, to me, the tree set's brilliant. You don't need all that hardware. You bring your anchor stakes, your cam straps, take your net, put it on trees, and it just, on Guam right now, it's all we use, right? We strictly set tree sets, and we catch very, very high percentages, as you'd expect with any trap, and it's just super easy to use.
And that's what I'm getting to over time is just about 90% of the sets that I have are all tree sets. And it's just, it fits perfectly on any of the ground shape, slopes, anything like that. And I don't have to worry so much about whether or not a gate's going to fall, just because of the nature of it. But one of the other additions that's been brought about is because of some of those really large catches. Just earlier this week, we had a new world record come out of Australia with 86 pigs at one time. And I think that's where we saw kind of early on the just unbelievable numbers coming out of a 20-foot diameter trap. That, hey, what about this trap cap? Where did that come about, and so forth and so on. So that was an observation later on after those earlier versions of the Pig Brig came out. Anything you want to add about that evolution?
Yeah, so most metal corral traps are 5 feet tall. So that was kind of our benchmark to work from. But the one thing that we've observed I've been catching pigs for over 30 years, is if you get a lot of pigs in a trap and then they start all piling up, not intentionally, right? It's not they're lifting each other and throwing them over the top. They're just all piled up during the day, and you'll see other pigs start climbing up on top. And then the little light bulb goes off and you'll see them go over. So from our perspective, we were like, how do we adjust that, right? I don't want more net. Then you need taller. It's already, challenging enough to drive T-posts in hard red clay. So it's like, we don't want it taller. So what do we do? And that's where we came up with, hey, why don't we just you think like a prison fence, right? Where you've got the angled in barbed wire, how do we do that with netting? So obviously we don't create an angular structure. We just made super simple, right? Just make that ring and net on top. And I've never seen a pig get over the top of our trap, unless there's some major failure. If somebody doesn't set it up right and the net comes off a post and it's hanging low, so those things may occur. But as a whole, the trap cat for me, and I'm not trying to sell anything. I don't. It's for that 100% confidence that pigs aren't going to escape professionally. I go with a trap cap all day long. It gives you that peace of mind, especially if you have the chance of getting a really big catch.
Right. Right. And I think one of the things is just the beauty of the trap as well, is just the adaptability. If you think early on, you may not need that trap cap. You can get it in a clip-on version and variety, and have it mailed to you to add on to later. The other, I think, is just a phenomenal attribute of the pig, or the Pig Brig, is the fact that if you do have a trap that's getting a little age on it, maybe that bore shield or the base net's getting a little worn, but the bore shield's a little further gone there. We got the clip-on bore shields. We can add a bore shield over there if you've got a base net that's in good shape, and you can just continue to move on. And then you talked about being able to buy the materials in the local hardware stores and so forth. There, the other things too, Vicky, I guess, is one of the feedback that we get from our customers out there is like, look, we can source all of these different parts and components in the local feed store, hardware store, whatever. Is that we've now are offering just the unbundled version, just the nets. And I mean, I don't know if there's anything you want to say about that, and just obviously just from response of our owners.
No, I mean, for us, it was really a understanding that not everybody needed every part. So if you're moving from tree sets to, to a regular set to something that's more complicated, we see a lot of customers making their own parts or buying their own parts that they prefer removable anchor stakes or different kind of T-post mounts. And so recently we decided to unbundle the product and allow people just to buy the net with the measuring strap, because that's really, as Tony said, our sort of secret sauce and the specialty item. So you'll notice on the website that that's now available. And you can buy the parts you want. So anything from the trap trigger and Brig baiter, which we are offering, that allows you to move from conditioning mode to set mode or capture trap shy pigs. Got some videos on the website about that, and that's a relatively new item for us. You can set the trap remotely, you can feed pigs remotely, you know, and it allows a lot more flexibility with the trap to just buying the net and using all of your own parts, or upgrading some of the parts that we already do offer. So that was a, you know, something that we sort of thought about at the beginning of the year, a little bit like McDonald's, kind of have it your way, to borrow their slogan, and here we are. So excited about
I
that.
think yeah, and one of the things Tony's talked about there in the earlier parts of this discussion is just starting out in Guam. I mean, there's not a lot of easy places to get to in a jungle, though, is it, Tony? So I mean, it's something that having something like that you can take all the weight out, put it on your back, and you just take your own straps with you and move on. You can go to where the pigs are. Or, I mean, I've caught pigs now over 30 years, closer to 40, I think, and many times I didn't go where the pigs were because the equipment was too cumbersome, too heavy. You couldn't get there. And I mean, this is even too whenever we didn't even have to think about cell signals or anything like that. So I know now that I can literally take a 65-pound net, and it's got a little mud and a little dirt on it, a little water in it, or whatever else. I can follow those pigs all day long wherever they go. I know that old Randy out in West Texas out there can throw this net on the back of one of his ponies and chase them across a rock and tie it to cedar trees. So there's nowhere that we've not been able to follow the pigs. And a lot of this comes from the feedback that what we've got in our 10,000 customers out there across 36 markets. So, and then Vicky, also too, the confidence that you've got in the system that we all do is that whenever we have something that we believe in so strongly, is basically you test drive it. You mean, if you want to use it, you kind of still somewhat on the fence as whether this is something for me or not. Hey, take it and use it. And make sure that it fits your marketing or your management strategy, your ownership trends. Make sure it fits your protocol. So if there's something that you want to add to it, that we're just not just a net. It's a total family, total experience.
I think the other piece, and I'll jump on, is, you know, with gathering feedback is our support, right? If you have any troubles or problems, we are always here to answer the phone. I think very early on, it was Tony and I on the phone taking those calls on a Friday night, trying to help people out and make sure they knew what they were doing. And it was certainly a lot harder then because it was new and there weren't as many videos out and not as much experience, but we were really learning a lot about how to tell people how to use it, or even how people were using it and all the things that could go right or go wrong. Now we have a really awesome resource on Facebook in our Pig Brig owners group, and it's a great place for people to help each other and for us to get ideas and take feedback. You know, and I don't know, it's just been a really virtuous circle, sort of hearing from customers what they like and don't like, and thinking about the, you know, sort of a where we head next.
Right. Anything you want to add to that, Tony?
Well, I think the more on the technical side is, you know, the one thing that I neglected to mention was what we call a skirt on the bottom. And people look at like, why does the bore shield go to here? Why is the bore shield made of this? And what we call the base net's made of this. And then the skirt looks, you know, as it does, it's different mesh size, because we went through many versions. And the one thing we noted, which seems silly, but when a pig goes to push in baseball net with a 2-inch square, their freaking nose gets stuck in it, right? So they're trying to push in, the nose gets stuck, they're backing out. And when you had trap shy pigs, that was it. They were gone, right? That was just too much nervousness. So that's when we started making the portion towards the ground a reduced size so the snout wouldn't get cut. And then we also pulled in all that extra material if you just use the rectangular net, so the pigs don't have that friction, we call it, to enter. And one of the things you'll notice on our version, the final version that's out there, is you'll see the bore shield stop about 4 or 5, 6 inches from the ground. And that's because we want to have that smaller mesh size right where the pig's snout hits, right? And slides and makes it just an easy grease end. So, if people are doing some other versions, I'm happy to let them know, like, you need to be smarter, and you really need to think about all these details that we've included, or you're going to miss a lot of pigs. So just be mindful, and be creative with our trap, and give us all the feedback, because maybe we've missed something. I don't know. But we've put a tremendous amount of time and thought into this. We've been really open with our customers and professionals out there to make this the best trap possible. And now you see those that make other trap styles of the old metal corral traps. They're envious of this product. There's no question about it.
Well, Tony, you alluded to something there that I just know until you brought it up, it was escaping my mind. But the height of the bore shield where it's terminated above the ground there to allow those pigs to transition into that trap seamlessly there. Can you talk a little bit about the tolerances of how high you want that bore shield above the ground, and then any of the minor modifications that are acceptable to still keep the function of that trap exactly where we know it is?
Yeah, so we spent a lot of time looking at trail camera video early on, and one noted, the pig nose getting stuck, having too much loose net on the bottom. They would start to push in, and it would get underneath their feet. And some pigs that are just, naive, they just bulldog in. They're going to get in there, right? It was the ones that we didn't really want to miss that we were afraid of. And so if you look at how a pig starts going in, their snout goes right at the ground there, a little above it. So you want that bore shield seam, right, where the double net is, that should be somewhere 4 or 5, 6 inches off the ground, just so the pigs hit that. They're not hitting the heavier and the visibility factor, right? We tried using a solid material on the skirt at one point, just so that the mud wouldn't adhere as much, and pigs wouldn't push under. They would not push under that solid material. So you don't want to have the duplicate net down where they start pushing under, where it creates a visual obstruction for them. Well, we have noted, because we have tested some newer materials that folks are getting now that have greater UV protection. It's stronger material, that it'll stretch. And so that what we end up doing is, if we get a trap designed or made so that it sits just like I talked, perfect bowl when you set it up, and the bore shield's 4 inches off the ground, what'll happen is that net will settle and stretch, even just sitting out without catching pigs. So when you catch pigs and have that load and it's raining, then that net gets too loose, and you get to that point where pigs are getting challenged entering. So if it comes there and some of these nets are a little tighter, I simply hold on to the top rope or the top of the trap cap. I just walk around and stop, just to kind of pre-stretch it. And even letting it sit out overnight in conditioning mode, you'll see it go from what we call the skirt again, off the ground, to sitting pretty. And sitting pretty to me is that skirt being about a foot laying on the ground, and then the sidewall starts to form up to create a beautiful bowl. So when a pig hits it, man, it's just like grease sliding in that trap, and there's no hesitation.
Right. One of the questions I know that comes in quite often, and folks that are out there that are listening, we're going to wrap up here in just a few minutes. So if you've got questions, start thinking about those questions to put them into the Q&A. But what, Tony, one of those product development considerations or decisions that were made is the internal anchor stakes themselves being the size that they are. And frequently we get questions about the internal anchor stakes bending. And can you talk a little bit about the decisions that went behind why they are the size that they are?
So as everyone knows, pigs can be heavy and pigs are strong, right? So we started with, the version that we have now. And then we were like, geez, they bend. But I could easily grab it, put it on the hitch on an ATV or the truck, straighten it out. I'm like, that's fine, but let me see if I could make something that doesn't bend. So then we went with a cold rolled steel and 5/8 inch. And it's strong. They're robust, but you get a 300-pound boar that's bouncing around in there and lands on it, and then you bend that, unless you're a bigger man than me, which isn't hard to be at this stage as I'm an old man, but you're not straightening that son of a gun. So we kind of had to do the trade.
Rhetorical vocabulary.
Yeah, there's some swearing, but with and the weight, so if you're looking at shipping these items, you just keep amplifying all the challenges, and then you have to carry it in the field. So for me, you could bend those things over and over, and I've never had a problem. Just be smart, keep about 15 inches out of the ground, so there's plenty of opportunity for that net to slide up, and that's why you don't want them. Some people get lazy; they only put them in a foot, and then they wonder why they bend because there's leverage. So I don't like them any more than 15 inches out of the ground, especially if the soil's soft, to make sure that there's a least chance that they're going to bend. So all those things are important to think about. And it's not as though, we're building something lesser than. It's just what's realistic to keep the lightweight factor associated with the whole foundation of our trap system.
And one of the things to draw attention to as well is with those heavier anchors like that, and straighten them a little easier with using heat, a torch or something of that nature. Whenever you heat the steel and it cools again, it's annealed and it's going to be more brittle in those locations where you've had to heat it and straighten it and things like that. So keep that in mind if you are using heat to straighten those internal anchor stakes. That could be a weak spot in the future. So think about the methods that you're using to straighten those out. But I think what we've covered a lot of things tonight. I mean, is there anything else, Tony, that you want to add?
Well, we always tell people, right? Get to your trap before the sun comes up. That is critical. Not so much, one of the sayings I've heard, I can't remember who from, these are pig traps.
It's Randy.
They're not pig pens. So
pens.
That's your trap, get there at first light. And the other big advantage, which I know you guys have emphasized, is pigs are much more calm when you're there in the dark. And it's a lot easier to euthanize them in the trap with a light on your firearm than it is coming in daylight and having them bouncing around like rubber balls. So from that perspective, I would advocate making sure y'all plan on getting up early, check your trap, and get those animals dispatched so there's not any humaneness issues.
Vicki, is there anything that we need to hit on again? Anything we need to add to?
I mean, I don't think so. The other thing I feel like that's been a focus of ours that maybe I will hit on just a little bit is the research that we do. And that's been a really fun component, Aaron. I give you a lot of kudos, and Pietro and Simone, who's not with us tonight, but we do sponsor and support a lot of research looking at, whether it's movement behavior or how pigs are behaving under different management conditions, looking at deterrence. We spent a ton of time, Tony and Aaron, in the field and working with University of Georgia on how to keep deer off bait or bears off bait. So you are continuing to track those pigs. We can share those data with you. I think Abby does a good job of getting that out. We've got some research fielded right now around effectiveness and humaneness of the trap, and that's going to be interesting for a lot of people to look at. And then we've got another PhD student looking at movement and what happens under different management regimes. So it's really been a big focus of ours to both support new learning and, internally support a lot of research around how we can help you be better at getting those pigs off your land.